Hey guys, tonight we begin with a tin star, a loaded revolver, and the impossible job of keeping order in a place where chaos is the daily special. The Wild West Sheriff. Hollywood sold you the myth, the fearless lawman with perfect aim, a strong jaw, and an unshakable moral compass, striding down dusty streets to face down outlaws at high noon. Sounds heroic, right? Wrong. The reality was sleepless nights, constant drunks, political backstabbing, and the very real possibility that the next person you tried to arrest might put a bullet in your chest before breakfast. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Congratulations, you're the new sheriff. Maybe you won an election by 12 votes because the previous sheriff got shot and nobody else wanted the job. Maybe you're a former outlaw who figured law enforcement was safer than robbing stagecoaches. Maybe you just needed steady work and were foolish enough to think wearing a badge would earn you respect. Either way, you've just inherited the most dangerous, underpaid, politically toxic job in the entire territory. Your first morning starts before dawn, not because you're an early riser, but because if you don't check the jail before dawn, there's a decent chance your prisoners escaped overnight, died of alcohol poisoning, or started a fire trying to light their tobacco. The jail isn't some fortress with iron bars and stone walls. It's a wood frame building with a couple of cells, maybe a cot, definitely rats, and locks that a determined drunk could pick with a belt buckle. You walk through town while it's still dark, boots crunching on dirt streets, littered with horse manure, broken bottles and the occasional unconscious miner who didn't make it home from the saloon. The air smells like dust, livestock, and stale whiskey. Your office, if you can call it that, is a desk in the corner of the jail with a stack of wanted posters, a half-empty bottle of rock gut someone left as a bribe, and a logbook you're supposed to keep updated, but never do, because you barely have time to sleep, let alone document every drunk you threw in a cell last Tuesday. You check your gun. Again. It's already loaded, but you check it anyway, because out here, hesitation gets you killed. Then you step outside, pin that tin star to your chest, and hope today's the kind of day where nobody tries to shoot it off. Welcome to law enforcement, frontier style, where the job description is survive, and the benefits package is mostly just not dying. The first thing everyone misunderstands about being a sheriff is that it's not about gunfights. It's about paperwork, politics, and babysitting a town full of armed, drunk, argumentative men who think laws are suggestions. Your actual day isn't filled with heroic standoffs. It's filled with tedious, exhausting, deeply annoying tasks that nobody warned you about when you took the oath. You start by making rounds. This means walking every street, alley, and backlot in town, checking doors, watching for trouble, and reminding people you exist. It's hot. The sun beats down like it has a personal grudge against your hat. Dust coats your throat. Your boots hurt. And every 50 feet, someone stops you with a complaint. Sheriff, my neighbor's dog killed my chickens. Sheriff, someone stole 3 bottles of whiskey from my saloon. Sheriff, that Chinese fellow is using my water from the creek. You're not a lawman, you're a customer service representative with a gun. You settle disputes about fence lines, stray cattle, unpaid gambling debts, and whose mule belongs to whom. You mediate arguments between drunks who can't remember what they were fighting about. You chase down livestock that wandered into the general store. You collect taxes, which makes you the most hated man in town every other month. And the tax collection, that's its own nightmare. You knock on doors with a ledger and a fake smile, asking people who can barely afford beans to hand over money for town services they don't believe exist. The saloons, brothels, and gambling halls that actually generate revenue? Their owners know the mayor, so when they're short on payment, you can't push too hard. Meanwhile, the widow running a boarding house gets the full pressure because she has no political protection. Most of your job isn't enforcing the law, it's preventing 20 idiots from killing each other over things that don't matter. And if you're lucky, really lucky, nobody pulls a weapon during these conversations. If you're unlucky, you're breaking up fistfights, dodging bottles, and trying to disarm someone who thinks shooting you will solve their property dispute. You don't get lunch breaks. You don't get days off. If something happens at 3 a.m, someone's pounding on your door, shouting that there's trouble at the saloon again, and you have to drag yourself out of bed, strap on your gun, and deal with it. Because if you don't, the town descends into chaos, and chaos gets people killed. So yes, you wear a badge, but most days, that badge just makes you a target for complaints, a magnet for problems, and a reminder to everyone in town that you're the one who has to clean up their messes. And you do it all for about $70 a month, if the town council remembers to pay you. Your jail is a joke, a bad one. It's not San Quentin, it's barely a shed with bars. Most frontier jails were hastily constructed wooden structures, with cells that wouldn't hold a determined drunk, let alone a hardened criminal. The locks are cheap. The bars are sometimes just thick wooden planks, and the whole building smells like a combination of unwashed bodies, vomit, tobacco spit, and despair. You've got maybe 2 cells, 3 if you're in a fancy town. There's no running water. There's a bucket in the corner that serves as a toilet, and you're the one who has to empty it because nobody else will. The smell alone could be classified as cruel and unusual punishment. Your prisoners aren't exactly model citizens. They curse at you. They threaten you. They rattle the bars at night so you can't sleep. Some of them are genuinely dangerous, murderers, claim jumpers who've killed over land disputes. Others are just pathetic, old drunks who've been arrested so many times they treat jail like a free boarding house. And escapes? They happen. Regularly. Someone loosens a bar over several nights. Someone picks the lock with a fork. Someone's brother rides into town at midnight, shoots the lock off, and flees before you can even load your rifle. You wake up to an empty cell and a note that says, "Thanks for the hospitality, Sheriff." And you know you'll never catch them because they're 50 miles away by sunrise. Worse still, lynch mobs. You arrest someone for a serious crime, murder, assault, horse theft, and suddenly a crowd gathers outside your jail at night. They're drunk, they're angry, and they want frontier justice, which means hanging the prisoner from the nearest tree without a trial. You stand between them and the cell, one man with a shotgun against 20 armed townspeople, and you have to decide, do you uphold the law and possibly die defending a criminal, or do you step aside and let mob rule take over? Some sheriffs fight, some sheriffs die. Some sheriffs unlock the cell and walk away, pretending they were overpowered. Because in the West, the line between law and chaos is thinner than your jail's walls. If there's one universal truth about being a Wild West sheriff, it's this: drunks are your eternal enemy. Not outlaws, not bandits, drunks. Loud, belligerent, armed drunks who have nothing better to do than cause problems and then blame you for ruining their fun. Every single night, without fail, the saloons fill up. Cowboys, miners, gamblers, drifters, they all pour in, spend their wages on whiskey that could strip paint, and within 2 hours, someone's thrown a punch, someone's pulled a knife, and someone's fired a gun into the ceiling because they thought it was funny. And guess who gets called? You walk into the saloon and the smell hits you first. Sweat, tobacco, spilled beer, vomit, and something vaguely flammable. The floor's slick with liquor, and God knows what else. The piano player's still going, pretending nothing's wrong. And in the corner, 2 men are grappling over a card game, while a third one's waving a revolver and shouting about honor. You don't pull your gun, not yet, because if you escalate, everyone escalates, and suddenly you're in a shootout over a $5 poker pot. Instead, you wade in, grab the loudest one by the collar, and tell him in your calmest voice that he's done for the night. He swears at you. He swings. You dodge or you don't, and either way, You're dragging him outside while his friends heckle you and the bartender shrugs, because this happens 6 nights a week. You throw him in a cell. He'll sleep it off, wake up with a headache and a fine, and do it all over again next Saturday. You know this. He knows this. It's a ritual, a stupid, exhausting, occasionally bloody ritual. And it's not just saloon brawls. Drunks wander into the street and fire guns at the sky. Drunks pass out on porches and freeze to death in winter. Drunks start fires. Drunks fight their wives, their neighbours, their horses. You spend half your life chasing down drunks, arresting drunks, or scraping drunks off the street before a wagon runs them over. The worst part, you can't ban alcohol. The town needs the saloon tax revenue. The bartenders are influential. And if you crack down too hard, the townspeople vote you out and elect someone who'll look the other way. So you manage it. You contain it. You show up, break up fights, and pretend you're in control while whiskey-fueled chaos swirls around you like a dust storm. And occasionally, just occasionally, one of those drunks pulls a gun on you. And then your job stops being annoying and starts being fatal. Here's something they don't tell you when you pin on that star. You're not hired for life, you're elected. And elections in a Wild West town are popularity contests where your opponents are saloon owners, crooked businessmen, and anyone who thinks they could do your job better, which is everyone who's never actually done it. Every year or two, depending on the town, you have to campaign. You have to shake hands, make promises, and convince voters that you deserve to keep the job that's slowly killing you. And your competition? They'll say anything. Sheriff so-and-so is too strict. He arrests too many people. He doesn't arrest enough people. He's corrupt. He's weak. He shot that one guy and didn't shoot this other guy. You can't win. If you enforce the law strictly, the saloon crowd votes against you. If you're lenient, the church ladies call you soft. If you arrest a popular outlaw, his friends hold a grudge. If you let him go, you're accused of being bought. Every decision you make creates enemies, and those enemies wait patiently for election day. And the job doesn't pay enough to save money. You're living month to month on a salary that barely covers rent, food, and ammunition. If you lose the election, you're unemployed in a town where everyone knows you and half of them hate you. So what do? You bend, you compromise. You look the other way when the mayor's son gets drunk and shoots out a window. You accept a gift from the gambling hall owner to ignore his rigged tables. You make deals with people you shouldn't trust because the alternative is losing your job and your livelihood. Some sheriffs stay honest. They enforce the law, refuse bribes, and lose elections to someone who promises the town a lighter touch. Other sheriffs become part of the problem, taking cuts from illegal operations, protecting criminals who pay well, and turning the badge into a business. You tell yourself it's survival. And maybe it is, but every compromise weighs on you. Every bribe you take, every law you ignore, every criminal you let walk because he's connected, it adds up. And some nights, when you're sitting alone in your office with a bottle and a guilty conscience, you wonder if you're even the good guy anymore. Or if you ever were. The town doesn't care. They'll vote for whoever promises them what they want. And you? You're just trying to keep the job long enough to maybe, someday, retire without a bullet in your back. Domestic disputes are the calls you dread most. Not because they're dangerous, though they absolutely can be, but because there's no winning. You're walking into someone's private hell, uninvited and unwanted, expected to fix years of resentment, abuse and anger in 5 minutes while everyone involved hates you for being there. Someone reports shouting, screaming, things breaking. You walk up to a house or a tent or a shack, and you can hear it before you knock. Crashes, curses, crying. You announce yourself. Sheriff, open up. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you have to push your way in. And what you find is chaos. A husband and wife, both furious, both drunk, both blaming each other for everything wrong in their lives. Maybe he hit her. Maybe she hit him. Maybe they're both bleeding. Furniture's overturned. A lamp's shattered. Their kids, if they have any, are hiding in the corner, terrified. You try to calm things down. You separate them. You ask what happened. They both start screaming at you, at each other, in overlapping waves of accusations and fury. He says she's impossible to live with. She says he drinks away their money and comes home violent. He says she provoked him. She shows you bruises. What do? In theory, you arrest the aggressor. In practice, it's never that simple. If you arrest him, she might beg you not to, because he's the only one earning money. If you arrest her, the town will mock you. If you arrest both, their kids starve. If you arrest neither, you're condoning violence. There's no law that really protects women in these situations. Domestic violence isn't taken seriously. A man's home is his castle means you're not supposed to interfere. You leave feeling useless. You know you'll be back next week, next month, and nothing will have changed. And if she ends up dead, which happens, you'll investigate a murder you saw coming but couldn't prevent. Most days are mind-numbing routine, but some days the job tries to kill you. You get word that outlaws hit a ranch outside town, rustled cattle, maybe shot the owner, definitely armed and dangerous. Now you have to go after them, alone if you're unlucky, with a posse if you can convince anyone to risk their neck for no pay and a slim chance of glory. Forming a posse is harder than it sounds. You ride through town, asking for volunteers. Most men suddenly remember they have urgent business elsewhere. Eventually, you scrape together 3 or 4 men, a ranch hand who's bored, a retired soldier who misses the action, and maybe one guy who just really hates the outlaws you're chasing. You ride out. The trail is dust, heat, and long stretches of nothing. You're tracking men who know the terrain, who are desperate, and who will absolutely shoot you if they see you first. Every ridge could hide an ambush. Every canyon could be a trap. You're not a professional tracker. You're just a guy with a badge, squinting at hoofprints and hoping you don't ride into a bullet. When you find them, if you find them, it's never like the movies. There's no dramatic standoff. It's chaos. Someone fires. You fire back. Horses panic. Your posse scatters. Bullets crack past your head. And you're thinking, this is it. This is how I die. In the middle of nowhere, over someone else's stolen cattle. If you're lucky, the outlaws surrender. If you're not, someone gets shot. Maybe them. Maybe you. Maybe one of your posse. And now you've got to explain to his widow why her husband's dead. You drag the survivors back to town, bloody, exhausted, traumatized, and the town council thanks you by arguing about whether to reimburse you for the ammunition you used. And the outlaws you arrested? They might escape from your flimsy jail. They might get lynched by a mob before trial. They might bribe a judge and walk free. Justice in the Wild West is a gamble, and you're just the guy who rolled the dice. Some sheriffs die in shootouts. Others get ambushed. A few get shot in the back by someone they arrested months ago who held a grudge. The mortality rate for lawmen is real, and every time you ride out after criminals, you're reminded that this job has an expiration date. You just don't know when it is. Here's the thing about Wild West sheriffs that Hollywood never shows. Most of them were former outlaws, gamblers, or drifters who just happened to be good with a gun. The line between lawman and criminal was thinner than a razor's edge, and plenty of sheriffs crossed it regularly. You know the outlaws, sometimes personally. You grew up with them, rode with them, or arrested them so many times you're on a first-name basis. You play poker with men who've robbed stagecoaches. You drink with men who've shot people. And they drink with you, knowing full well you might arrest them tomorrow if they step out of line today. The law isn't black and white out here. It's a negotiation. You let small crimes slide because enforcing every law would make you more enemies than you can handle. You ignore illegal gambling because the mayor runs the gambling hall. You don't ask too many questions when cattle mysteriously change brands because the rancher who found them is a friend. Some sheriffs were outlaws before they pinned on the star. Maybe you rustled cattle in your youth. Maybe you ran with a gang. Your past is a secret, but not a well-kept one. The old-timers remember. They whisper. But as long as you keep the peace, they don't care. You make deals. A known horse thief agrees to leave town permanently instead of standing trial. A gambler pays a fine under the table, and you forget you saw him dealing from the bottom of the deck. A brothel stays open because the madam provides you with information about who's passing through town. Some sheriffs take it further. They run protection rackets. They tip off criminals before raids. The badge becomes a shield for crime, not a weapon against it. Why? Because the pay is terrible, the job is deadly, and nobody's watching closely enough to stop you. But here's the paradox. Sometimes bending the rules keeps the peace better than enforcing them. You let a popular outlaw go because arresting him would start a riot. You make a deal with a gang to leave town instead of forcing a shootout that would destroy half the buildings. Is that justice? No. Is it survival? Absolutely. The job is messy, political, and morally grey. You're not a hero. You're a man in a tin star trying not to die, trying to get re-elected, trying to keep a town from tearing itself apart. Despite everything, the drunks, the danger, the politics, the exhaustion, there are moments when the job feels worth it. You talk down a drunk with a gun. No shots fired, no blood, just words, patience, and the man finally lowering his weapon and stumbling home. That's a win. You catch a thief who's been terrorizing local businesses for months. The shopkeepers thank you. Someone buys you a drink. For one night, you're the hero they thought you were when they elected you. You mediate a land dispute that could have turned into a range war. Both sides walk away, unhappy but alive. And that's success in the West. And sometimes, just sometimes, the town grows peaceful. Crime drops. People start trusting the law. You walk through the streets and don't hear gunfire. Kids play without fear. Families settle. And you realize you helped build that. You brought order to chaos. You made a wild town a little less wild. The respect when it comes feels good. People nod as you pass. They call you sheriff with genuine appreciation, not sarcasm. You've become a fixture, a symbol of stability in a place where everything else is uncertain. And there's a strange satisfaction in the routine. Checking doors at night, making sure the jail's secure, watching over a town while it sleeps. You're not a warrior, you're a guardian. And some nights, when the stars are bright and the town is quiet, you feel like maybe, just maybe, you're doing something that matters. But don't get comfortable, because tomorrow, someone will get drunk, someone will pull a gun, and someone will need you to risk your life over something stupid. And you'll do it, because that's the job. So how's your time as sheriff been? You've broken up bar fights at 3 a.m, chased outlaws through the desert, dragged drunks to jail 6 nights a week, settled disputes over stolen chickens and fence lines, barely survived shootouts that left you with ringing ears and holes in your hat, bent the rules to keep the peace, bent them further to keep your job, emptied chamber pots from jail cells, watched prisoners escape, faced down lynch mobs, mediated domestic disputes that made you want to quit, collected taxes from people who hate you, and wondered more than once if this tin star is a badge of honor or just a target on your chest. Still dreaming of being the heroic lawman, of standing tall in the dusty street, respected and feared, the symbol of justice in a lawless land. The myth is powerful. We've built entire legends around it. Wyatt Earp, Wild Bill Hickok, the noble sheriff who always wins. But the reality was far messier. Most sheriffs weren't legendary gunfighters. They were ordinary men handed an impossible job in towns that barely wanted law and order in the first place. The frontier wasn't about justice, it was about survival, and sheriffs embodied that tension. You enforced laws that half the town disagreed with. You risked your life for a paycheck that barely covered rent. You played politics with killers, bent rules to avoid bloodshed, and compromised your values so often you forgot what they were. And still, you showed up every morning, pinned on that star, and tried, desperately, imperfectly, to keep people alive. But here's the remarkable thing. Despite the danger, the corruption, the exhaustion, men kept taking the job. They stepped into the role knowing it might kill them, knowing they'd be hated as often as respected, knowing the law they enforced was as fragile as the towns they protected. They became sheriffs, not because it was easy, but because someone had to. Because without them, those rough towns would have devoured themselves. And some of them, just some, made a difference. They brought order where there was chaos. They stopped violence before it started. They built trust in communities that had none. Not through heroic shootouts, but through patience, negotiation, and sheer stubborn refusal to let their towns fall apart. They weren't legends. They were just men trying to do an impossible job in an impossible place. So tonight, when you lock your door knowing you're safe, when you settle a dispute without violence, when you trust that someone's watching over your community, maybe take a moment to appreciate it. Because your ancestors, literal or spiritual, survived the Wild West, the lawlessness, the danger, the impossible choice between justice and survival. They wore the star, faced the guns, and kept the peace as best they could. And somewhere in the dust of a forgotten frontier town, a tin badge still glints in the dirt, worn by men who tried to bring order to chaos, even when chaos was all they'd ever known.